The Public Servants Association welcomed President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement to regulate spaza shops in South Africa, but criticised government for its lack of accountability in food-borne illness in this crisis, of course. In contrast, the Township Business Advocacy Group, together in defence of the Township Economy, argues that the government should empower entrepreneurs with skills to enhance the spaza shop industry and not just regulate it. Okay, the President, Sipho, Mthembu, and PSA Supervisor John Tefo join us now live. To you both, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. I think, let's start with you, Sipho, on this particular issue. First of all, your reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's address last night?
Thank you. I'd first like to good morning to everyone. We welcome the President's announcement, especially the announcement of a fund, as much as it's not sufficient to address the challenges in the township economy, but we think it's a step in the right direction. And second, we also welcome the issue of registration of spaza shops, and we really hope that this process will be done in a transparent and fair manner to ensure that only businesses that are fully compliant are registered. We feel, though, that the President missed an opportunity to address the issue of illegal foreign-owned spaza shops as well during his address. Thank you.
John, let me bring you in there for your reaction, of course, to the President's address last night. A bit of empowerment for the spaza shops, the fund that has also been alluded to by Sipho. But let me get your reaction, first of all, to the President's address on this issue.
Morning to you and to your viewers. Maybe the first point would be to pass our deepest condolences to the parents who have lost their children through this food poisoning problem. Our take, it's simple, is to say, while there are some encouraging issues, like when you go the direction of putting money to try and address township economy, we must say, we see also it as a shotgun approach, which would not necessarily work. There's a need for proper diagnosis and analysis of how did we get here. You would also acknowledge that the President himself indicated that the municipalities do not have the capacity. So already when you put a government institution that needs to ensure that they account and manage and regulate a space where they are not fully competent, already from that point, you have a challenge. And that's where the issue is. You have got a government that is not responsive, that is reactive, that does not seem to have the necessary capacity to deal with the challenges at hand.
And I know that you've already criticized a government's lack of accountability in this particular matter. Were you satisfied with the President's words yesterday? I know that there are interventions, a number of interventions that he's mentioned. For example, the spaza shops that have been implicated should immediately be shut down. But do you think that that is sufficient? You also speak to a very critical aspect of whether the capacity is there to actually go out and do these inspections of these shops. The President did say that they will start in Gauteng as well as in KwaZulu-Natal.
The reality is that when you talk about whether it's a municipality or provincial governments, there is no capacity. And that capacity, one, is due to the fact that there is inadequate staff to deal with challenges. Two, is the element of corruption that we cannot shy away from. And thirdly, is the employment of those that are actually also do not have necessary skills to deal with. I mean, we have got various challenges that needs active, visible inspections, within our townships, within our rural areas. But we don't think that is going to be possible. And even if you say we're going to do that for a month, and if I'm owning a spaza, I could easily just close that spaza. You do your things after a month, I open that. But we know that the municipality is not going to be able to go and check that these are the spazas that have been opened, that are the spazas that have been registered. And the element of corruption, people would also be able to get the fake papers and deemed to be registered.
Some envisaging that is something that's going to happen as well. Let me come back to you, Sipho. The president announcing this joint fund of 500 million rand to support, township and rural businesses, including community convenience shops. Do you think this is a step in the right direction?
Yes, we think it is a step in the right direction. It's a start. I mean, as we've been, as TITE, we've been calling for a long time now for establishment of a Township Economy Development Fund, which will not be loan-based, but which will be more of a grant. So we definitely welcome that, and we think it is a step in the right direction. But as we mentioned, that it's not sufficient to address the challenges of township economy development. But furthermore, it needs to be very clear that this fund must be made accessible to South Africans and South Africans only, because we need to focus on that as part of addressing the challenges that we have within the spaza shop environment.
And you think the president missed an opportunity there, because in part of the address last night, I think it was him mentioning that the contaminated products not only came from shops that were owned by foreign nationals, but also from, South Africans. I think the key issue here now, I see you nodding there, Sipho. I think, would you want to come in on that?
Look, I think the president definitely missed an opportunity to address the issue. And I don't know, and this is the problem with our government. I don't know if they've been seeing all the videos and all the photos that have been flighted all over social media regarding the source of contamination. Yes, it might have been from everywhere, but everything that we've seen seems to be coming from the unhealthy and inhumane and also uncompliant way that foreign nationals tend to run and manage their businesses. And I haven't heard, and I don't know anyone has ever heard of a South African-owned store where the contamination has happened. Let's face the facts, and let's call it what it is. These shops are foreign-owned, and it's the foreign-owned nationals that are managing the businesses in an unhealthy and inhumane manner, and in a manner that's non-compliant.
Sipho, this is an area, of course, which you'll be watching very closely, as you have been, over the coming months. And, part of what the president spoke about, in reaction, I also saw you nod your head when I asked the last question to John about the president indicating that these are not just only shops that, are owned by foreign nationals or being operated by foreign nationals.
Maybe if I come in here, I also need to mention that we hope that the fund will not just focus on the entrepreneurs or shop owners, but it will also focus on the landlord, because we tend again to miss an opportunity of providing support to the landlord, because the landlord is the one that needs to be compliant as well in terms of various regulations, including the various municipal building regulations. So the fund must not just target shop owners, but it must also talk to the landlords as well and provide the necessary support to the landlords to ensure that they are supported properly. For example, some of the shops that we've seen do not have proper electrification. They don't even have COCs, which is one of the things that they're supposed to have. Others, even the piping as well, the network is not done properly as well. So the focus should not just be on store owners. It should also be on the landlords themselves as well and provide the support there as well.
Right, let's bring you in, John. Your take on, of course, having to watch what's going to happen over the next couple of months, the incapacity that has been spoken about. Very easy again for those shops to be closed and reopened again at a later stage. We usually see instances like this where there's a reaction to a situation and then it certainly goes back to normal again after a couple of months. This has happened before.
On our side, Oh,
I think
so Mr. Tefo, do you want to chip in?
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr. Tefo, please come in.
Yeah, I think I want to say there is no corruption that can happen in any country without involvement of the locals. We would be naive if we want to say we are all these good citizens in South Africa and we have got all these foreigners that are only people who are dealing with these issues. And I'll quickly, we had our own spaza shops that some could not manage the pricing. When the foreign spaza shops came with low prices and we did not know where they were getting their stock. But as communities that are challenged by the reality of high living costs, enjoyed buying whatever that they were buying cheap. And obviously they cut corners. But I want to say, we also have the enablers in the form of, it could be our business people, it could be our politicians in our country. So that is why I earlier on indicated that if you deal with a shotgun approach without digging deep and analyzing to say, how did we come here? What are the issues? Then you are able to, we feel as much as we are able that there's money that you are going to be, you can't throw money at problems without proper diagnosis. And that's why we ask PSA to say, we need a proper diagnosis and ensure that the state is capacitated. Get people, get them trained, get the business people involved so that we work together, we root out this problem that is killing our nation.
And John, 21 days for these shops to be re-registered or registered. Is that sufficient time? Do we see compliance coming? I know the president did speak tough to say if that does not happen, law enforcement would need to, come in there. People should be prosecuted if, they don't comply with this 21 days that is being given to them to have these shops registered or re-registered.
Our take is that, let me just comment on that before I talk to 21 days.
Yeah.
I think the issue perhaps that we need to ask ourselves, have an impetus of some sort, is to say, should we allow the foreigners to have spaza shops? And why I'm asking that, I mean, I've been to Zimbabwe, I've been to Malawi and other countries in Africa. I don't remember finding a South African having a small shop. There are big corporates like the ShopRite and so forth. Maybe if we start there and say, if you are a foreigner, you've got business ideas, you can only have 40%, the local must have 60% of that. So it should then have been a part of a requirement to register. We're still saying this issue of now having 100% of foreigners registering and having spaza shops and all these lower skills where they are given opportunities at the expense of South Africans should be relooked at. And we think President has not made a proper diagnosis with regard to that and missed opportunity completely to correct this problem.
Sipho, would you agree with that? That, one of the directives that government should have given relates to what, John is saying, about there's got to be certain compliance that needs to be met. And first of all, according to John says that you shouldn't have a situation where foreign nationals are operating spaza shops in South Africa, or at least there be a percentage.
I fully agree with John. Firstly, we are, and this is quite a national security issue as well. It's not just a matter. I mean, how do you make it a responsibility of undocumented foreigners and leave it to them for our food security? I mean, that's itself, it's quite a high risk to the people of South Africa. So government should definitely would have expected a much more stricter regulations, especially as it relates to foreign nationals, because this is food security. If ever, it's quite a big security risk to the country. I mean, look at what is happening right now. It's quite a big problem. So I definitely agree with John. But in addition to that, I'm saying that as TITE, what we've done, we've put together a monitoring and evaluation task team, which will be very, very much active on the ground to monitor and ensure compliance with the various regulations. But not only that, it will also be very much involved in monitoring that the registration itself it's above board and it's done properly. Because we know that money will flow, and we know that foreign nationals will throw money at some of the government officials and they'll find themselves registered even if they are not compliant.
Is this also something you're concerned about, John? It could open the door for a certain level of corruption. We've seen instances where if there's registration that needs to take place, the exchange of money, and one of the concerns that Sipho raises is that where money is involved, the 500 million we're talking about, that should actually go towards spaza shops that are owned by South Africans. Foreign nationals should be excluded there. And also, there should be a clear distinction on how the element of corruption would be dealt with as it would creep in. Compliance means having some kind of paper that says, I am compliant. Who says that you won't see some of the fake ones that would otherwise be making the streets?
That's the reality we're dealing with in our country. But there must be a caution there. While the TITE initiatives are much appreciated, to have a task team or task force that will deal with those issues, we also do not want to see them taking law in their hands now, like they are, because we have got a kind of a self-regulation. That must start at home. But the challenge of corruption, we have seen that even during COVID, and every time there's an opportunity and there's money, obviously there are hyenas that are licking their lips to say, how do we get access to that? So the best way would be also, there must be accountability. All those that spaza shops that would have been registered there must be an open list that would be there for access to anyone. If from, for instance, the TITE, they would have checked that the John Tefu's papers are not in order, there should be that system of allowing people to can appeal. I'll give you an example when it comes to the taxi industry. Although it's not working the way it should, the law says when they apply for a route, gazette it so that people can see and say, John Tefo want to have a taxi, you can object and so forth. If we can have that kind of openness, but not only that, we should have that multi-party approach. Bring in the local business guys, so that they can also be able to have access and monitor that process. So that when at the end of the day, everybody could be able to say, we have checked that. We should not just only putting it in the hands of the few. The systems need to be tight. There must be control measures that we have proven to lack as a country. Because when you see the wasteful expenditures and all that we're having, is the problem with the control measures. So for me, I'm saying, open that so that at any time people could knock, and those papers could be subjected to scrutiny by those that would have been recognized in that particular space. You cannot regulate that space without involving the people that are involved in that township and rural space. It's high time that we make sure that when we deal with issues, we involve people that are the ground floor that are affected by the very same thing. You can't talk about taxis without taxi people. Why do we want to talk about spaza shops without spaza shop people? Let's bring them in so that they are part of that monitoring.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.